So let's move on from Marvel.
Yeah, we probably should.
We just came from watching Ghostbusters Frozen Empire.
Yes.
A movie that both of us had puckered buttholes because we didn't know how it was going to turn out. We were afraid it was going to be bad.
We had heard or saw or gotten the inclination, shall we say, that this movie was not going to be very good.
Luckily, we were right and they were wrong.
Yeah,
it was
I am pleased as punch about this movie.
And it has... You don't see the actual big bad as much as I would like, but man, he was fucking
He's still
awesome.
a presence throughout the entire thing.
He was a presence throughout the whole thing, but man, that character design and everything was badass.
It's really good. It's really good.
Like, I'm waiting. You know damn well there's going to be Funko Pops.
Oh, I've already seen them.
Oh, you have?
I've seen them. They've advertised for them for a few months now.
I gotta buy that shit, man.
It looks great. It looks really
awesome.
cool as hell.
That character's great.
It's so cool.
And it is... Like, a lot of the interviews with the writers and filmmakers said they took their a lot of the cues for this movie from the Ghostbuster animated series.
You can tell
that villain is a villain from the animated series.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm not saying he was in the animated series, but it's like that character design, the tone, the look, the very dark, kind of brooding at the end. Like, it was pretty scary. There were some scary moments, and it's like, that was the animated
I think you've
series.
hit on something. That is why I like this movie. This is a really good Saturday morning cartoon.
Oh, yeah.
In live action.
Absolutely.
And it is the culmination of everything I've wanted out of a Ghostbusters movie since they talked about bringing back the Ghostbusters. This is it. We don't have to form a team. We don't have to do this, that, or the other thing. The problems, the way that we're going to homage the original is going to be organic to the story that's happening around it.
Yes, I agree.
And so while it's there, you don't have an entire plot line that brings back the demo dogs and all these other things and Ivor Shangler and just all these other elements that, like, okay, yeah, that's great. Why are you still crutching along on that? We get it. You don't need to reestablish all this shit. Let's go. And this movie was like, oh, okay, let's go. And it's just a really fun action movie.
And you said it right there. It's very fun.
It's so fun.
So it does open on the scene, which in the trailer, I couldn't quite tell when that scene was, when the fire department breaks into the room and everyone's frozen to death. Such a great visual.
That was an actual chilling scene.
Of a dude who was turning the crank on a record player and he had frozen, so his arm had broken off, but the arm was still spinning.
Because the record player is possessed and it's just playing this possessed thing over and over again.
That was awesome. That was such a cool visual.
Oh, it was so good.
It was so good.
That entire sequence was so good. It was very funny because I think that the theater looked at this movie and said, is it horror? Is it comedy? Maybe it's both. And so
same as the first one.
All of the trailers leading up to this movie, it was the ping pong match of a century.
Yes.
Between
oh my God.
Very kid movie, super kid movie, and just like deep adult film.
Like, I can't wait for that fucking Tennis and Die movie to come
that
out.
was
So
the funniest shit. That was
again.
the funniest shit. That was quick aside, because I gotta talk about this.
What was the first trailer?
The first trailer
Inside Out 2?
was for Inside Out 2.
Yes.
And so it's like, okay, Inside Out 2, light, airy, frothy. Maybe not expressly for kids, but definitely has a kid in mind. And then also we try and include stuff for adults that are like, oh yeah, I get that. That's funny. I get that joke. Served back. Hard tennis, Jules et Jim, polyamorous relationship all about sex, starring Zendaya, who somehow is Serena Williams and then has an injury, and suddenly she has no talent for anything ever.
Well, and I love it because the visual of seeing the trailer for Inside Out end, and then the green come up with our graphic nudity, graphic content.
That was such a moment of like,
it was awesome.
Oh, okay, interesting. And so we watched this whole trailer, and I'm still like, nah, this movie looks like shit. It looks like porn for people, softcore porn, I should correct.
Yeah.
For people that really, really like Zendaya. Like, really,
I still
really.
don't get it. I still don't get it.
Anyway, that trailer ends. Boop. Back to the other side of the table. Despicable Me 4. Boom.
Yep.
And it's just like, what the fuck is happening? Someone explain to me.
It was crazy.
Who programmed this?
But and you're right. It was But that's what made the first one so great. The original 1984 Ghostbusters so great is it was that perfect blend between horror and comedy, because there are parts of that movie that are actually, I would say, very scary. Like when Dana's getting possessed by the devil dogs.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, that was really scary. And then you had the funny parts. And that's exactly what this movie was.
Yeah.
I mean, you open on that scene, and then it goes to the scene you actually kind of seen in the trailers of Gary and the Spenglers chasing after that long, like, serpent-looking ghost.
Yeah, they call it the Dragon of Hell's Kitchen or something.
Which is... and I'm kind of glad they did this. It's the opening scene, and it's
just a quick cut action sequence.
75% of the trailer is
that
that scene.
Yeah.
So that's good. It's like, okay, so the trailer's like, this is the movie, but it's only going to be that very beginning.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because there was a lot of surprises in
I
this
agree.
movie.
There were a lot of moments that I did see in the trailer, but the way that they were conducted in the trailer was in a way that was separate and different enough from the actual movie so as to be like, oh yeah, this didn't reveal anything.
Exactly.
And I'm not waiting for anything to happen. I'm not sitting there being like, well, but this hasn't happened, but this hasn't happened. And it also gave me expectations that then weren't what happened.
Exactly.
We're gonna get into how the monster is actually released. I thought it was gonna be your typical possessed item brought in by Ray. Okay, we're gonna give it to these scientists. Scientists are gonna be like, oh, let's play with it. They open it. Guy who opens it becomes possessed. He becomes the monster. And it's just that whole storyline again. That's not what happens. And I was sitting there pleasantly surprised because that was kind of the way that it seemed to be going for me in the trailer. And I was delighted that it kind of zagged on me on that way. And when the guy shows up with a bandage in the next scene, I was like, oh, so that's not what we're doing.
The only negative is you could definitely tell there were a couple scenes in the trailer that were not in the movie. And so I'm really hoping that when the Blu-ray comes out, there is like a director's cut with the deleted scenes added in. Because like there's the scene where Lucky, her character is fighting the big bad, and in the trailer...
she dies. It looks like she dies.
She either dies or she's going to die, and then someone stops it.
Yeah.
But then it goes right to, like, it shows her, like, starting to freeze, and then it goes right to she's actually okay. And it's like, well, what? Because in the trailer, you show, like, her eyes freezing, and it's like...
Yeah.
How did that not happen?
I remember that.
And that was the only, like, I noticed that. I was a little kind of taken aback by that.
Yeah.
Celeste O'Connor plays Lucky.
This movie had this style that, like, the trailer definitely shows.
Yes.
But it doesn't show us everything.
Yes.
And it definitely, like, there were a lot of things I thought were going to be. We were talking on the way home. Both of us thought Kumail Nanjiani was going to be kind of a one-off cameo, and he was not going to be a part of the plot. Surprise!
He's actually... What his role and what Patton Oswalt's role... were reversed than what I was thinking it would be. Because Patton Oswalt is just... He is just a cameo.
Yeah.
But hey, great 10-minute cameo.
Amazing 10-minute cameo.
But it's not what I thought, but you're right. And what Kamal plays Nadeem.
Yes, Nadeem.
Ends up being like one of the main heroes.
He is the... what's the name?
Firemaster.
No, yeah. Well, he's the Firemaster. Yeah, he's the Keymaster.
He's the Keymaster, but he's the Firemaster.
Exactly.
Yeah, same thing.
And so, but it's that thing where there's a thing that has to be, someone has to carry this title.
Yes.
And it's like, okay, we've seen this in
Even
Ghostbusters.
though it's different than the Keymaster, which the Keymaster brought about the big bad, the Firemaster puts back the big bad.
Yes. No, exactly. Yeah. It's not the same.
Exactly.
It's not even trying to be the same. It's reminiscent of, while still being its own thing.
Yes, which is great.
I deeply, deeply appreciate that was kind of how it was. I should try and figure out internally why the little Stay Puffs I'm okay with. Because the little Stay Puffs are a merchandising option.
Yes.
Which usually, Flurkins, I hate. I hate it when the merchandising option shows up and you're like, oh, hello. You're going to try and be a thing for a hot minute. It's not going to stay. You will be a fun thing to look back on, but no one's going to care in 6 months.
Yeah.
And the Stay Puffs are right in that zone. I'm like, man, you already know how many fucking pop figures they're gonna make of the Stay Puffs, and how many shirts and mugs and things, and you got the big bottle of Mr. Stay Puff, and I just, as someone who just got a Stay Puft Marshmallow Man for my pop figure set, I was very pleased with this merchandising option. It did not bother me because it was always a joke, and the joke never interrupted things, and it never stuck around too long.
That's what I was gonna say. It's not in it's the baby Stay Puffs are only in a couple. We're not gonna talk about the post credit scene, which was terrible, but
you don't need to stay for it.
It's only in a couple scenes. And it's very brief, just like you said.
And
so it doesn't overstay its welcome.
They're used to effect in the storytelling element of the movie itself.
Yeah, especially the second time.
They actually, the first time they show up, you're like, oh, these are funny. And then the second time they show up, you're like, oh, this is part of the storytelling.
Yeah.
And
especially after Podcast realizes that there was a voice coming out of the ball that was talking to them and controlling them, and you're like, oh, fuck.
Yeah. So, like, but that's one of the things about this movie is that usually touch and go means, like, it's kind of on and off. Touch and go here for me is it touches it and then it goes. And it doesn't get hung up on anything. It doesn't stop and ponder the meaning of things. It doesn't have a 20-minute aside of like, oh, look how funny the Stay Puffs are. Oh, they're going to take over a bakery. Oh, they're going to bake themselves into things. Like it's just the visual gag of them killing themselves in grotesque, hilarious ways. Great ways. And that's it. But it just goes. There's some of the cameos, not from actors, but from moments in other Ghostbusters movies. They just come and they go. Yep. And they don't hang around. It's not a whole thing. We're not going to take 20 minutes and examine it and do it. No, it's here, it's funny, and we're going on. And I really appreciate that with this movie because it's not a brevity thing. It's just a pacing thing. It just never gets bogged down in those sight gags, but it knows how to sprinkle them in a way that, like, I literally turned to you after the librarian one, and I was like, that's a tasty member berry. Like that, it's so exactly what you want it to be. Yeah. Because it's there, and then you move right on.
And to me, the number one piece of that was Walter Peck, William Atherton, as the mayor. He is so perfect.
It's so funny.
But he's only in three
scenes, yeah.
And brief.
Yeah.
And he's perfect.
He shows up to be the 80s bad guy.
Yeah, and he's got the tone.
He comes in and he waves a paper and he says, you can't do this. And I'm telling you right now that you're not allowed to do this. And so then everybody has to stop doing what they're doing, but they have to kind of secretly do it instead. And shenanigans ensue. Yeah. There's so many 80s movies where that is the case of just like that guy specifically comes in, you can't do this. Okay, well, we're going to do it anyway. And you can't really stop us.
And I haven't seen him in anything recently, and he was so perfectly toned to what Walter Peck was.
He picked it up just like perfect.
Yeah. And you could tell by his acting that underlying seething of hate for the Ghostbusters because he knows they made him look stupid back in the 80s, and now they're going to do it again, and he doesn't think so.
I love that the way that they use the politician against itself here is, spoiler alert, when all hope seems lost and the end of the movie happens, the resolution on Walter Peck is that he basically gets pantsed by Winston on a live stream,
which is awesome
because he's in front of a crowd of people that are so excited about the Ghostbusters, and he has to be like, I guess the Ghostbusters are okay, and Winston takes that and runs.
Yeah, which I'll be honest, I'm, as much as I love, and this is easily the best thing Dan Aykroyd has done.
Oh my god!
In 30 years.
Oh my god!
He was fantastic.
You could see how much fun he was having.
Oh, he loved every second of
it. There were several soliloquies that he gave that were not acting. They were just Dan Aykroyd saying a thing about how he lives his life.
That he fucking believed. Exactly.
Like that's just Dan Aykroyd.
But it has gotten to the point that if they, and I hope they make another movie. I know the reviews are not great, but it is a good movie, folks. If they make a new movie, I would be totally okay if it was just Winston Zeddemore of the old Ghostbusters. and like maybe Ray, but like as great as the little parts with Bill Murray in it and Annie Potts, they weren't in it very much, but the parts they were in was pretty good.
Again, perfect. It's just this perfect flavoring
just
on top.
Perfect amount.
The boomers save the day.
Yes.
And
or they try to, and it's actually the youngsters.
Yeah.
But I would not mind. Like, I never thought I would say you can't make a Ghostbusters movie without Bill Murray. You know what? I would take just Ernie Hudson and maybe a little Dan Aykroyd peppered in there in another one. As much as I loved Murray, he wasn't... His scenes were entertaining, and they were great, but they weren't necessary. And same with Annie Potts. To where Winston, I love how he is the voice now of Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
He is the head of Ghostbusters, and Ray is the crazy old guy that won't let it go.
Yeah.
But has a purpose now.
I was about to say, he still serves a purpose. This is what I really love about this movie, is that we see all of the Ghostbusters, sans Egon, for obvious reasons. You might say he's here spiritually. Aww. We see all of them in this organic way. So when they show up, you're not like, what the fuck is this nonsense? And it's not just because it's a sequel, but like when Venkman shows up in this movie, we both agreed, that was such a delight. Oh. That was just one of the best scenes of the movie. So great. And it was just this thing where it wasn't this big lead up where it's like this, it's like watching one of those long jumpers and skis where it's just like they're going down this big hill and they're going to hit that jump and boom. No, it was just like, oh, and here he is. He's right here.
And it wasn't like a heroic action scene or anything. It was just the scientist scene.
And he got to be an actual smart character.
Yes.
While purposefully annoying someone. Which
was so great.
Which is all Venkman wants to do, is annoy
so
people.
Great.
He got to be paid for what he loves to do.
And I would love to have known, like, to me, it would make me happy if they ever have, like, a making of, and they say that the questions he asked, what the heck was his name again?
Camille Nanjiani,
Nadeem. The questions he asked him, Bill Murray just made up off the top of his head.
It kind of felt like that.
If you're going to eat a child, would you prefer it skinned or not skinned? It's like, what the fuck? And please, gods, tell me, I don't believe in you, but if you're up there, tell me Murray just made that shit up.
I was going to say, I think that those are two actors that just riff.
Oh,
they are known to riff, and I think that they have a bunch of different versions of that conversation.
Oh my God.
Of just like Bill Murray trying to think of obnoxious things to ask this character to get under his skin.
Yeah.
And then they just went through and they picked the ones that they liked.
It was so good.
It's very good.
It was funnier and shit.
It's so good.
And I love because they make the questions when Murray's asking them, he's so deadpanned and so serious about them. And the reaction of Nadeem, you're like, that's the reaction you should have to some of these fucking questions, which were just insane.
Oh my God.
And it was great. It was
so good. I thoroughly enjoyed.
The big complaint you and I, or not complaint, the biggest concern you and I had was how they were going to interject characters from the previous movie in this, aka Lucky and podcast. Fucking nailed it out of the park.
The best compliment I can give this movie is that it did the Steve Harrington. It took a character that I really didn't like, and it made him a character that I really, really
like.
like.
That you called it a Steve Harrington because there is no better ever description of that.
And it's just like, it's different. In the first one, Podcast is an annoying character, whereas Steve is like he's kind of a douchebag and he beats people up. He's not a good guy.
Yeah.
Or I guess he gets beat up. More to the point, he gets beat up. Here, it's the same thing of just like, man, all the things I hated about Podcast in the first one, I find really funny in this one. Yeah. Where he has the big hammer that he just carries around so he can smash things when they're either possessed or not possessed. It doesn't matter. He'll just smash it.
Yeah.
And just like the line of Antiques Roadshow people out the door waiting to see if any of their stuff has any kind of reading on it. And I just thought to myself, they must know. Like they must know the premise of what's happening and that every item gets smashed.
Yeah.
And so, like, I can see, like, older ladies not understanding what's fully happening. But, like, there must have been, at some point, an understanding that you're bringing your stuff here. And
it's
one way or another, it will get smashed.
Yeah. Oh, it's so great. But you're right. Not only his character, though. If you think about Lucky in the first movie,
she didn't mean anything.
Kind of window dressing, didn't mean anything. She was awesome in this movie.
She was great. She was an actual part of this movie.
But, like, she was badass, and I loved the confidence she had and the way she was describing things. You could tell that she's been working for a year or two with Winston and learning about different things because She wasn't just there's this kind of dumb character who happens to be an intern. No, she was fucking part of the scientific world.
You believe that her experiences in the first one got her here.
Yes.
Where, like, because, not in a nepotism way, but, like, kind of in a right place, right time way.
Yes.
And so it's just like she's proven herself to be a commodity, so thusly she is no longer in Oklahoma, she's here.
And they do make a very big point that her and Trevor, which is Finn Wolfhard's character, are both 18.
Yeah.
So they're both adults. So you don't have to say, well, how did her dad let her go? It's like, she's an adult. She has an internship with a billionaire.
Yeah.
So that's why she went.
That's why she went.
Yeah.
And I just absolutely... I thought both characters were used so well.
Oh, so good.
To that point where when Trevor shows up at Ghostbusters Central... and she doesn't see him and she blasts the thing right in his face. I was like, oh, I like this. Yeah. This is great. This is really
awesome.
Good. And just like the various scenes that she's in, the way that the role that she plays in the rest of the movie, she never feels tacked on. I think that's some of the complaints some people have, is that the characters that feel tacked on are the characters you thought were going to be the main characters. And so you end up being like, Finn Wolfhard, what did he do in this movie?
And that's the thing. Is, let's be honest. After that, I think the first remake, Ghostbusters Afterlife, they used Finn Wolfhard just because of Stranger Things.
Oh, 100%.
They used his name saying he was never the lead character. It was always McKenna Grace.
Yes.
She is obviously the lead character in this.
She's fourth billed. Like,
I know.
To the point where I'm just like, really?
This is her franchise now.
She's the face of this franchise.
Yes, absolutely. And the fun part is, she is fourth billed, but I'm going to say she does a far better job running this franchise than Daisy Ridley did as Rey running the Star Wars franchise.
I'll go even further. I think she does a far greater job running this franchise than Paul Rudd did running the Ant-Man franchise.
I can see that.
I actually think Paul Rudd is better here than an Ant-Man.
Oh, yeah, because he
fits. He fits what they're doing.
Yeah.
And so...
And, like, I think Paul Rudd would have fit more in the Edgar Wright Ant-Man.
Yeah.
But when they got rid of Edgar Wright, they're like, well, we still have Paul Rudd. And then they just built a franchise around him.
They turned it into the This Is 40 version of Ant-Man.
Because, like, I looked at the original Ant-Man as, like, what he did with Hot Fuzz.
Yeah.
Where you took two comedians and kind of made them into action stars, but it was still really funny.
It was still really, really funny and referential to a lot of things. And played up the humor of, like, the superhero world. The actual physics and understanding of how these things would happen. Mm-hmm. And it took all those things and just turned them into single note, nothing interesting, just as rote as possible versions of themselves.
One of the best scenes in this whole movie, and there's a little bit of it in the trailer, when Paul Rudd is talking to Callie and he starts... Yeah. There's something strange in the neighborhood.
It was very good.
It was so perfectly written.
That was a scene that I was worried about when I saw it in the trailer. I was like, oh, okay, I don't know about this. And then when it happened in the movie, I was so delighted. Dude. And this is all Paul Rudd.
His delivery was 100%.
We're going to get to McKenna Grace because we need to talk about her.
Yes.
Paul Rudd him and Patton Oswalt could have been in the original Ghostbusters.
Oh, absolutely.
They are cut from the exact same cloth. Yes. Like the exact same. You think that Paul Rudd showed up as like a 10-year-old in the first Ghostbusters or something, or that he's Oscar. It's revealed he's been Oscar the whole time. But anyway, I really just like watching him here. It's like watching a puppy frolic in a field. Yeah. They're just so happy. Oh. And you're just so happy to watch them be happy. And they're just enjoying themselves. And you're just like, this is great. This is great. This fills me with the good serotonin.
Because like when he finishes it by saying busting makes me feel good, you know that's just Paul Rudd saying that because it is. He's like, I'm so happy to be doing this.
No, it's so perfect.
Yeah.
I love Paul Rudd in this movie, and I love Patton Oswalt in this movie.
He's so great.
I think he fits that same mold of like, he just seems like he should be here. He's always been here. And if you didn't know he hadn't been here before, you'd be like, oh, really? Because he seems like he should have been here this whole time. He just so perfectly fits what they're doing.
And like, I would love to see a sequel to this, to where they have to split up into teams.
Yeah.
And it's Podcast Ray and Patton Oswalt, and then everyone else, because those three are so perfect together.
I mean, that kind of was what this was.
Yeah, you threw McKenna Grace in there
exactly.
with them, but it was them.
You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of when I was like in my early 20s. Me and my brother would play a lot of Ultimate Frisbee, and my sister would play a lot of Ultimate Frisbee. And you had to divvy up the teams in a way where, because it was just a bunch of kids from youth group, and not all of them were very athletic, but some of them were extremely athletic. So you had to divvy up the teams in such a way so that the kids that weren't athletic weren't the only ones on one side.
I gotcha.
And basically you had to balance the scales. And that's how I look at this movie is it's like, okay, you got Ray, and Ray's going to bring this guy along. Okay, so that's a lot of knowledge. And then Ray also is going to bring podcasts along. That's great. Okay. We got to have somebody. Okay, we're going to take the best player on the other team, and we're going to put him over here, and we're going to have her take care of that. And she's going to be the one that's actually running this show.
And the reason she's there is because she's sidelined at the moment.
Because Walter Peck, excuse me, Mr. Dickless.
Yes.
Which I was hoping that he would call him Dickless.
They had an opportunity.
It was right there.
The only thing I could think of is it's not 1984 anymore. Even though this is PG-13.
You know, you're not wrong.
And that was PG back then.
You're not wrong. That's actually an excellent point.
I think that's the reason.
Yeah, no, that's that's 100%.
But you're right. I was expecting that too.
Yeah.
Or even if they would have taken a deep dive and called him Wally Wick, which the TV version of the original Ghostbusters was back in the day when they wouldn't bleep out something, or they would film alternate things. And in the alternate scene of that, Dan Aykroyd's character says, yeah, well, Wally Wick here. Because Venkman says, he's some kind of insect or something, instead he's Dickless.
Yeah.
So I wish they would have just called him Wally Wick or something.
And Wally Wick still fully works for the character.
Exactly.
You get that double entendre very quickly.
And that would have been like an absolute deep dive for Ghostbusters.
Yeah, that would have been good. That would have been really good. I actually really love the scene at the library. That's one of those scenes that you see all the time. The frame of reference that I always go to now is Dimension 20. My current favorite, Siobhan Thompson, who's brilliant. She's so great. She has a moment in one of the games that they're playing where a lot of exposition is happening, and they're trying to account for that narratively. And she's like, the story, I found a book called Exposition. It's just like all this information all at once. Anyway, that's how I felt about that scene.
Oh yeah,
it's like we're gonna go to the secret library.
Very Raiders of the Lost Ark too.
And we're gonna look at this thing, and there's gonna be narration. And all at once, I was like, has this been done a lot? Sure. Do I love it here?
Absolutely.
Oh, it's so good.
See, and I agree with you on the library scene. The only issue I have with the library scene is, well, twofold. McKenna Grace, she destroys the
one of the
lion.
Which is there at the end of the movie.
That exact lion.
Yeah.
Like if they would have shown the other one.
Exactly.
That was a little weird. But
as if to say it comes back together when things have finished.
Yeah, which I don't quite get. But the thing that really kind of bothered me was the reaction to her. Like the police are pulling up as the stone lion is jumping at her, lunging at her.
Yeah, they see that she has to do something.
And she destroys it. And they're like, why would you shoot the lion?
Why'd you destroy the lion?
So to me, that reaction was a little...
See, at this point...
Especially from Winston. Like, I was like...
That is surprising.
That was a little weird.
That is surprising.
I can understand him chastising Ray, saying, why would you take these kids into a dangerous situation? Yeah. I can understand that. But his reaction to her blowing up the lion, I was like, dude, it was literally lunging. It would have landed and killed them if she didn't fucking do it.
Yes. What did you want her to do?
And Ray's the one that told her to get the fucking proton pack from his motorcycle.
Yeah.
So it's not like she was even carrying one. It's like, oh, Ray said to do it. So.
Ray said to do it. No, I agree with you. I was kind of surprised, honestly, when Winston got on her case about that. When Walter Peck shows up, I fully believe
that was totally okay.
That some bureaucrat is going to point to this moment and be like, forget all of the context for what's happening. She destroyed a beloved thing. We have to be angry at her. Yes. She's a teenager. She's a menace. And just go full J. Jonah Jameson.
Well, it was a callback to Ghostbusters 2 when the Ghostbusters come out of this river of slime and the lead aide to the mayor throws him into the insane asylum with Bill Murray's actual brother, that was kind of a similar thing, which is like, I don't care if there's a river of slime underneath New York City. I don't want to hear about it. You fucked up. Here, I'm getting rid of you. See, that's exactly what he did.
It's nice to know that the mayor of Puxatawny has come out of an asylum to take candidacy.
That's right.
Anyway,
is so great.
Anyway, I think we should establish what we're talking about, which is that the big thing at the beginning is this big fight.
Yes.
Which results in Phoebe, McKenna Grace's character.
Even though she's 18 in real life, she's only 15 in this movie.
She's like barely 18 too. Like I was on Reddit and I kept on seeing her face because she's in a lot of promotional stuff, and I looked up her age and I had that moment where my heart sank because like she was 17 when I looked, but I knew it because she was born the year I graduated high school.
No, you're right. She is 17. She turns 18 the day before my birthday. She's June 25th.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So she is 17.
And we're going to get to a moment that just screamed one of my favorite moments in Fury Road, which is when they pull up to the many mothers and they see the woman in a cage, and Max just looks, that's bait.
Yeah.
There was an actual, that's bait moment in this movie. But anyway, I digress. She is told that because she's underage, she cannot be a Ghostbuster.
Yeah.
And also that they will get in trouble because she's not being paid. And I only bring this up, not just because it's important to the plot, because she's now been benched, as they keep on telling us, but also because the issue could easily been resolved. Because do you think the American workforce hasn't accounted for this? Of course they have.
Yes.
They have a plan. Unpaid labor is... we just call that being an intern.
Yeah. But that's what I loved about what Walter Peck did, is because you could see him just pulling things from the ether to throw at them, to piss them off and then get her.
Yeah. No, but I love that scene. I love that scene. I love that moment where Paul Rudd, they ask him what his relationship is with the children. He's like, I'm their step teacher.
You did have a good laugh on that. That was awesome.
And just like, but this is what I mean, is that Paul Rudd is so perfectly, his flavor of comedy is so perfectly, fits in that glove so perfectly. And having him here is just like, oh, this is awesome. And
like when he says we're all Spanglers and they look at me and goes, you don't want to be a Groverson. That was awesome. It was so great.
Oh my God. I love all the moments that he has where his plot, you know, like every movie you have moments where someone puts a gun on the wall and our good friend Chekhov says you must take off this gun and fire it at some point. And so like there's a lot of moments where that is very clearly like in your face in most movies of like, I wonder if this is going to come up again. Oh. Here, the Chekhov's gun was just him talking about, like, him joking, I'm the step teacher. What am I to these kids? I don't know. Yeah. But that's actually his whole arc of the entire film, is discovering and identifying and realizing what that is. And damn, if you're not enjoying the whole way,
it was so good.
You're just having a great time the whole time. Good. They never explicitly say what his relationship is with the mother. They clearly have sex. They are clearly together.
Yes.
They clearly have a romantic relationship.
That scene though, when she goes, "Yeah, we got possessed, got a little," and they fist bump. That was perfect. It's like yes, because it grossed out the kids, but it made it funny.
But like that was another thing.
Yeah,
is that you have this weird family dynamic where the daughter is clearly the smartest of anybody in the family.
Yep.
The mom cares a lot, but also is on her phone just a lot.
Yeah.
And kind of just lets her kids do what they think is best.
Especially her son, who's always like, I'm 18. She goes,
and
well, that's, take care of it.
And that was the thing, is like, she's like, okay, go ahead. You want to be 18? I was reminded of my own experience when I first moved out of my parents' house. This moment that my mom later helped me understand was important because I needed to gain skills based on how I moved out of the house, and I needed to be able to figure out how to do that the right way. And you know, sometimes you just need to be left to your own devices to figure out a problem.
I agree.
And did Slimer ever get figured out? I'm not sure. I'm not sure that part was ever really resolved. We got our, hey, I know him from work moment.
But I appreciate the thing about Slimer is it was so obvious in 99% of the scenes that it was a practical effect. Especially like when the hand came out to grab the Cheetos, it's like that's definitely someone's hand in it.
And like you look at the face and you're like, that's a puppet.
Yeah,
that's a puppet with After Effects afterwards, but that's a puppet.
I appreciate that. Well, same as what you were saying with the ghost in the library.
Yeah,
that you could almost see the arms on strings coming at Ray.
I think that they just literally picked her up out of the original and put her in this. They have the technology to do that. I think that they just took the exact same thing and put it in here. Yeah. And it awesome. Works.
It works so awesome.
That's one of the things. Like I laugh at Sony every time I see Ghost Core come up. I'm like, you schmucks. What is this? What's happening? What's happening here? Is this the new? Are you guys trying to be a Marvel? Is this a Marvel thing? Like, what's happening?
Everything's got to be a franchise nowadays.
But damn, if they don't have good effects in that house,
yeah,
they do a good job. In a world where there have been so many issues with bad or rushed CGI of late, the CGI in this is really good, and the practical is really good.
Dude, the practical is so good in this.
So, and the combination of the two is exactly what you want to see out of a lot of movies. I was super impressed with a lot of the things that they did in this movie.
I agree.
And so, anyway, Phoebe is benched. Meanwhile, Ray, who is, again, they perfectly just pick these characters up.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it's just so perfect how they pick these characters up, and you're just like, oh, yeah, that's perfect. That's exactly right. It doesn't hurt that Dan Aykroyd has become Ray Stantz in his later years.
And he absolutely is.
I think he always was, and then it just kind of like everything else slipped away, and we were just left with, oh, Ray was just autobiographical as a character. I loved all of his stuff.
Yeah, he was great.
That was all stuff that could have been obnoxious and terrible, and none of it was. Annie Potts, same thing. Could have been obnoxious and terrible, and instead I'm sitting here being like, I wish you were in more things because you're funny and charming, and I like seeing you.
And that's another scene that cut out from the trailer, which I wish is her with saying the famous Ghostbusters.
What do you want?
And it's like, that wasn't in the movie. I'm like, dude, I was waiting for that. I love that.
When, at one point, when Phoebe gets a call, she picks up the phone, and I'm just like,
hello?
Ghostbusters, what do you want? Say it. Oh. Say the words, Bart.
And she ends up getting a call to go meet up with her new friend, who is Melody.
Yes.
Who we get to meet is a spirit she plays chess with first in the park.
This was the moment where I was like, that's bait. Is Phoebe walks into, I think it was Washington Square Park.
I think so. And I like how they kind of did the switch bait on you, where at first
you thought it was Egon.
You thought it was Egon, but he had gone away, so it couldn't have been him.
Yeah. And so she's playing chess in Washington Square Park in the middle of the night, alone, with no one around.
Yep.
And I'm just like, listen, I've walked past Washington Square Park in the middle of the night, not alone, and I haven't walked through it.
Yeah.
The idea that this young woman would just walk into this park, I'm just like, Jesus Christ, the rabbit is in the trap. Oh my God, this is bad.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's not where the scene goes. Instead, we have this teenage bonding moment. And I really like this because this is the closest the movie gets to a love interest. And it never becomes explicitly a love interest thing, but it definitely has all the earmarks of a love interest thing.
Especially the final scene with the two of them before Melody dissipates.
Well, and the scene where she literally becomes a ghost so that she can be with Melody.
Yeah.
And then it turns out, funny story.
But I'm happy how they played that, though. Because they could have strung it out a little more, but Melody was like, nope, I was just waiting for you to do that.
Well,
then as soon as she did it...
But you can still tell that she's broken.
Oh, no, she's absolutely broken by it. But it was like they could have dragged that out a little bit before you realized that it was a double cross. But it was like as soon as they came face to face, Melody got that look in her face, and McKenna Grace is like, oh, are you okay?
What's wrong?
And then you're like, boom.
You should be happy. Why aren't you happy?
They don't specifically say when Melody died, but when she was reaching for the ghost containment unit...
She had like a 90s...
Well, I was going to say 80s. It looked like Madonna. If you look at Madonna and like the Like a Virgin, she had those fingerless gloves that were kind of mesh. That looked like that with like the bracelets and all that. So I'm assuming she died in the 80s.
Yeah.
So, which would be fun because that's right when the first movies came out, and so it'd be like, okay, that's a good.
It'd be interesting. It'd be interesting. No, I thought that whole thing was so interestingly done because they again, they never really dwell on anything too long. So nothing is necessarily like deeply delved into because we don't dwell on anything. So we're just kind of moving from thing to thing to thing. And those moments are organic enough and tied together well enough that you're like you're kind of just enjoying the ride. You're like, okay, yeah, oh, and then this, oh, and then this happened, oh, and then this, oh, and then this happened, oh, and then you're here, oh, and then you, and then okay, and then wow, there's a weird vault in your grandma's spice rack, and you're just moving along in the plot, but you never feel overwhelmed or undersatisfied with the pace and style of what's happening. And so often you have that moment of, does this need a romance? And this, I thought, really tracked that in an interesting way, where it was like, you can obviously get bogged down in the whole, like, oh, it's two girls. I don't want to talk about it. I want that to be normalized. I'm not interested in just talking about that for the sake of talking about it. I appreciate that it happened. I think it's great. I think that it should continue to happen. And we should address it as if it's normal, so that it can just be normal. Anyway, I really thought that relationship did not... I've seen a lot of relationships in movies that were incredibly forced, and that wasn't one of them. That...
And the funny thing is, and I am sorry to interject on this, but as I'm watching it, Emily Allen Lind is the actress that played Melody. And I'm like, I know I've seen her before. She played Snakebite Andy in Dr. Sleep.
Oh,
the one that comes in like halfway through, and she's part of the
change a woman's hair.
Yes,
and it
but I'm like,
changes
I
her
know
everything.
she looked familiar. I just looked up her IMDb, and that's where she was. Okay, sorry about that.
No. I agree that, and she was really good here.
She was.
We didn't get to know her too much, but that was kind of the key. We were talking about this on the ride home too. That whole idea that the movie doesn't stop and spell things out for you.
Yes.
It shows you exactly what's going on, and you can exactly tell what it means, but no one stops and tells you what happened.
Exactly.
And I so deeply appreciate that, because it allows the actors and the moment to kind of carry the weight, instead of having a moment where someone has to say, oh, is that the matchbook that burned your house down?
That killed you and your family?
And who struck the match? Why do you ritualistically restrike this match? It doesn't bring up any of those ideas. It shows you all of those things. And you're like, oh, okay, all right. And you see the characters make the exact same association.
Yes.
And it just, again, it's a way to bond you to the movie, because you're experiencing things as the characters are.
Yes.
And you just get to have that moment.
I agree.
In a really awe-affecting way. You're just like, wow, okay, cool, I'm in, let's go. And I just kept on having that all the movie long. I just had the dumbest grin on my face the whole movie. I was fully satisfied with every silly moment. There wasn't really anything that really pissed me off. There were a few moments where I was like, okay, I guess we don't need to move on, or we don't need to do this too much. We can kind of just let this be and not make a big deal out of it. But, you had that hallmark of Ghostbusters movies where they create all their own problems.
No, absolutely.
And
they find very interesting ways to solve.
I was going to say, getting kicked out of the library, which I love that moment when the guy comes out and he's like, you're not allowed to come inside. And Ray's just like, it's good to see you.
Yeah, because it's like, it's the same dude, but so much older than he was, because he was so young in the first movie.
But like, again, I always go back to comparing this to Ghostbusters 2. Is this better than Ghostbusters 2? Yeah. It makes reference to Ghostbusters 2. Like,
this is easily the second out of the main four.
Yeah.
Because I'm not counting 2016 because it's not part of canon. But out of the main four, this is easily number 2. Because like number 1 is an A++. This one, it was between A- and A. I think I might be on A.
I'm right in that same camp. I think it's an A. I think there are issues, but even now, they're not so harsh that I remember them.
Yes.
Even now, though, the moments that I'm remembering about the movie are the moments I really liked. And
well, that's the thing, is the good parts not only outweigh the negatives, but they counteract the negatives.
Yeah.
And so you're like, okay, so I don't know about that, but you know what? It doesn't matter.
It's fine. It's cool. You complain about how they have this ramshackled firehouse and it's broken and beaten down to the point where the MacGuffin of the movie is this big tank of ghosts that's never been emptied. And then cut to Winston running shields. And you're just like, Why did it get,
and the funny part
how
is,
did it get this bad? I feel like at some point you should have stepped in and helped out.
to me, it wasn't even S.H.I.E.L.D. as much as it was in all the James Bond movies. Anytime he goes to see Q,
yeah.
that's what it reminded me of. Because there was, like I said, there was the one scene where in the background somebody was shooting another person with the mood slime. And it's like little things like that. Because if you remember the James Bond movies, like there'll be a guy trying an exploding thing over here, a guy trying a gun over here. That's kind of what was going on in there. Like, and I wanted to see more of that one ghost that was in the that like demonic looking one that was.
Oh yeah, that was
started
scary.
to come out.
Yeah,
that thing was terrifying.
Yeah, that was creepy looking. That was the Doctor Who villain.
Yeah, that thing was awesome.
And you're just like, what is it? What does it do? It sucks in all the light.
Yeah.
What does it do?
Which the exciting thing is, and I really hope there's a sequel because all the ghosts get out of the containment unit, and all the ghosts get out of Winston's lab. So there's just ghosts everywhere.
Yeah, clearly they got a lot of work to do now.
Yeah. So I mean, there's got to be more stories.
Yeah. So I'm so pleased with this movie.
Yes, very much so.
I don't want to spoil too much more. I know that we've spoiled
pretty much the whole thing.
Most of it, but I just McKenna Grace's performance at the heart of this movie is really what drives it. It drives it with a lot of really good-hearted nostalgia, paired with some excellent performances from some characters that you really, really enjoy.
Yes.
You know, I can see people complaining about how Finn Wolfhard is in all the ads, but none of the movie.
Yeah.
I get it. It's fine.
Which is fine.
But I don't
honestly,
care.
I wasn't in love with his character.
That's fine. His character, the point of his character is literally to look around and be like, why does no one take me seriously?
Yeah.
And that's it. That's his whole character. There's no art.
And that's the thing is like him and his mom in this movie are like Laurel and Hardy.
Yeah.
They're joking. They're like playing off of one another, criticizing each other. And it was funny. It was the funny parts of the movie. He didn't have to be the hero.
No, exactly.
But the thing I've noticed about McKenna Grace, if they do another movie, they're going to have the same problem that Stranger Things had with Millie Bobby Brown. Is she's not this little 10-year-old kid anymore. Because like they had the glasses and the same hair, but it was obvious that she's a woman now.
It was that Anne Hathaway in Princess Diaries were going to try and make this person that they are, I don't want to say attractive because she's too young to be attractive. Yeah. But you know, in a few years, she's going to be a model and everything.
Yes.
And she's going to be doing perfume commercials and French shows and all these other things. And they had to make her look like a nerd. And so she's wearing overalls the whole movie.
They made her look like a nerd. They made her too much to look like she did in the first movie. And it's like, she did grow. I mean, it is supposed to be, what, 2 or 3 years? I think they said after the first one.
I'm not sure, honestly.
I think it was 2 years. I think Paul Rudd said 2 years ago I was
in
Oklahoma. So it was 2 years later. So it's like, you know, podcast, you can't help it. That dude grew like a foot.
Yeah.
2 feet even. Like, he was huge.
I didn't recognize him at first.
Yeah, I didn't recognize until he talked.
I joke that he's like your younger nephew.
Yeah.
And you're like, where's Jack? And
exactly.
Like, oh, that man in the corner, that's Jack.
And even Finn Wolfhard and the actress that played Lucky, both of them, like, okay, they definitely aged. But you were like really trying to force her to look younger than she is. And I understand it's part of the plot line being 15. And when they shot this, she was probably 15 to 16. But it's like, I think if they do another movie, they would have to say, all right, this is an adult woman now. We need to change that dynamic.
Do a time jump.
Yeah, we can't have her just being this like innocent youth who's just really smart.
I mean, that's always the tricky part, right?
It is tricky, but it's like, that's why that last season of Stranger Things, I was a little...
I was going to say, it reminds me a lot of Millie Bobby Brown and Sandy Sink. Of just like, I still see you as a child. Like, yeah, this is weird.
They got to find a way to change that perspective.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was just... And I think that's my only takeaway from her characters. I think they could have aged her up a little more. But other than that, I love the movie.
Yeah. No, I absolutely love the movie. There were a few moments where I was like, oh, that's convenient. Or that helps bridge a gap. Or I guess that doesn't matter. And honestly, I don't care. Like, it was so fun to watch and just such an enjoyable romp that ultimately I don't care about some of the issues.
Yes.
Why does this woman have a giant brass room behind her spice rack? I don't really care. You know, I could care.
Even the explanation made sense.
Yeah.
That's how they controlled demons back in the day. It was brass, and then it was soundproof, so he.
Oh no, I get that. I meant more in terms of the infrastructural elements
I see what
of
you're
it.
saying. I see what you're saying.
Yeah, like there's a lot of elements of it that you can kind of look at and be like, well, that's silly. That's stupid.
But that's why I love that it takes place in New York. Because if there's one thing about New York, and you know this, is some of those buildings are really fucking old.
Oh yeah, you never know what you're gonna find.
Like that shit.
Yeah.
Like she could have been living in that apartment forever.
Exactly.
Because of that room.
Her family has always been in that apartment since they came to this country.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So.
No, I really like that. I really like all the flashbacks and everything. And I just really like the characters, ultimately.
They're so good.
I like the way that they address each other. I love the speech Paul Rudd gives to no one. It's a really great speech. Yeah. It's like a little heartbreaking because he gives this amazing speech.
And you know that she's not there.
And you know she's not there. And you're just like, man, dude, I feel bad. But also, at the same time, there's not a moment later on where Paul Rudd is like, oh, you remember that speech I gave you? And she's like, what do you mean? Like, there's not that moment. Yeah. You still get the moment where she identifies with him as a father figure and all these other things. And you have that without them having to communicate it in a, remember what I told you kind of way. And just like, all that way that callbacks that you don't need.
It is funny, though, that for decades now, I have always said, the number one name for a stepdad in any fiction is Gary. And his name just happens to be fucking Gary. It's like perfect.
Gary Gruberson.
Gary Gruberson.
That's another thing I do want to touch on before we close out here because we are just about done.
Yeah.
I love the names.
Oh,
the names as you introduce characters are still amazing.
Yeah.
Because you have the Spanglers and you have Nadim. But you also have, obviously Gary Gruberson. But then you also have in this movie introduced our Patton Oswalt's character, Hubert Wojcicki. And you have the kind of snooty lab tech who gets his hand burned by the globe.
Lars Pinfield.
Lard Pinfield.
Well, first time I saw that,
I thought it was Penfield.
That's what I thought.
I thought it was Penfield. I was
Lars
like, is his name Penfield? So like that's always been something that I absolutely love about Ghostbusters is when they get the names right.
Yes.
The names have to be that great line between being very silly and also being a real name that you wouldn't like be like that's not a name. There's no Aaron A. Aronsons or anything like that. Although, Hot Fuzz, Aaron A. Aronson, sir.
That was pretty goddamn great. But yeah, so great movie, great time. Finally, we go to see a movie that we actually have.
This was a great.
Lots of positives.
This was the theater experience you want to have.
Yes.
We walked in, we saw the merch that they had. We said, "Oh hell yeah, that looks fucking awesome." And we watched the movie. We're like, oh, hell yeah, this is fucking great.
I gotta say, too, I kind of enjoyed the 10:15 showtime. The morning showtime
Not
was
gonna lie,
good.
it was kind of good. It was kind of good.
I was really awake and ready to...
My only note, I saw some chocolate milk on my way out of the concession stand, but my only note to AMC is maybe have coffee.
And the funny part is I think they used to.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Well, they got wine now, so there you go.
This is the thing. They have a lot of things to put you to sleep.
Yeah, exactly.
They don't have a lot of things to pep you up.
Mostly the movies that have been playing lately.
I will say, really, props to Sony. One last word. They paid the Weather Warlock to just dump snow on Rochester just as this movie was coming out.
Perfect.
So good on you, Sony.
Yeah,
that was an excellent investment.
All right, folks, that was been Nerd Pod Generations episode 132. We really hope you enjoyed it. And please come back next week. We probably will not have an episode because Sunday just happens to be Easter Sunday.
Yes.
And then the next day I have a 5 a.m. wake-up call to go do a stupid inventory. We'll get it, folks. We'll figure it out. But Nerd Pod Generations, once again, episode 132 is in the books. If you liked what you hear, please go back and listen to our past stuff. And make sure to like and subscribe. And if you want to know more about us, you can find Al at...
You can find me at jutsomstudios.work under the Bronx Division tab.
And as soon as I get a minute to scratch my ass, we're going to finish our website for this.
I know, we've had busy years, man.
It's been so busy.
This year has been crazy.
Yeah.
Like, usually when I look at March, and I'm like, God damn it, it's March. I'm like, for other reasons.
Yeah.
Now it's like, wow, the year's flying by because we've been so busy and life has just taken us by the lapels.
It will happen. It will happen, folks.
Our theme is by Brendan Williams and James Connelly, and our logo again is by Kortney Howell.
We will see you in a couple weeks.
We'll see you again, friends and enemies.
Peace.